Morning. Take note what the church did. They were praying. There are certain characteristics that the church does when it's under trial. And here we see a case. They prayed. They gathered. You know the four things we talked about? Prayer, the apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking of bread. Those are kind of default mechanisms for believers. The old reliable that you go to. You see? And they decided to pray. Now I wonder with us, if we had a member of our gathering, someone we know and love who's in prison on death row, I wonder if we pray all day and night and gather. My suspicion is we'd probably find out who's the best constitutional law attorney in Indiana or the state. Hire him. We might pick it outside saying it's unjust. But I think as a group of believers realize that you have an evil person like Herod, evil's not going to listen to reason. Evil's going to do what evil's going to do. So as I said, let's take note what the church is doing. The church was gathered and praying. Why? Because that's what the church does. The church identified in the book of Acts was a praying church. That's what the church does. And I think we've realized that in our own life. When we're up against it, we know there's no way out. What do? We look up, don't we? That's where we're supposed to be. This is one of the characteristics of the faithful. They turn to God as their source. They did not get Peter a good attorney. They did not try to reason with Herod. They sought God. One of the things with this gathered body, I think it's implied, is they understood the power of God. They understood the power that God had and could be used on their behalf if they went where they needed to go, which was on their knees. Verse 6, the night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between the two soldiers, bound with two chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Now this is really interesting if you think about it. Here Peter just saw one of his friends executed James. He's sleeping. He's sleeping. He's on death row. There's a good chance he's going to suffer the same fate that his buddy did, and he's sleeping. But that should be no surprise, because what's one of the gifts of the Spirit? What will be demonstrated? That fruit of the Spirit, the things I talked about. Joy, love, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We see Peter exhibiting it. Because as he's getting squeezed, what's coming out of him is what was put in him. Now, if we try to put ourselves in that position, we wonder, what would I do? You can't get there and sleep when you're on death row unless God's giving you the peace. You can't muster it up. You can't do it. It can only come from the Lord. Like I said, he's on death row and he's sleeping. The Spirit of God, when it's raining, gives us comfort, gives us peace. Because the promise Jesus had for us was when the Comforter comes, he specifically said Comforter. And here we see a case where Peter is obviously comforted. Chapter 7. This is where it gets really cool. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. "Quick, get up," he said. And the chains fell off Peter's wrists. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals," and Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." The angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison. This is classic. But he, Peter, had no idea what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first and second guards and came to an iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know without a doubt that the Lord sent his angel to rescue me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were anticipating." Who got the praise? Who did Peter give the praise to? It was the Lord. He knew he could take no credit. But while this was happening, what was happening in that home? The church was gathered praying. When this had dawned on, verse 12, had dawned on Peter, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark. Many people had gathered and were praying. The saints gathered and prayed. When God's people gather and pray, amazing things happen. Because that's when the power of God is turned loose. Because then he gets the credit. Because he fought the battle. He won the victory. And then he truly gets the praise. So they were gathered. The book of Acts says we are told to believers that this is one of the things that you see, the default mechanism for the church, is they tend to gather. Close ranks, so to speak. Hit their knees, seek the Lord, and put him back in his rightful spot. And it's the characteristic of the church. When in trouble, you gather, you pray, you seek the Lord, you seek his direction. Because we've realized that one of the things on our own, our efforts are often quite futile and disastrous at best. Peter knocked at the outer entrance. A servant girl named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was overjoyed. She ran back without opening and exclaimed, "Peter is at the door." Now think about this. Peter gets let out of prison. He goes to the home where they're praying. Rhoda tells the people Peter is out, what they've been praying for. They've been praying for Peter, right? He gets delivered, he gets sent out, he gets there, and their response is, when they're told he's there, is, "You're out of your mind." They told him. When she kept insisting that it was him, they said it must be his angel. You know, sometimes we're told that when we pray we have to have a certain disposition. That's good. Sometimes it's faith. But here's a case, the simple act of the faithful praying. Even when the prayer was answered, they still didn't even believe it. They were questioning. Anybody ever in that place when they pray? Must be his angel. Verse 16. But Peter kept on knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. "Tell James and the brothers about this," he said, and then he left for another place. How did Peter get out of prison? It was an angel while the people were praying. And he described how he got out of prison. I don't think he was talking about anything he was doing. What happens next is even more mind-blowing.